Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm beyond honored to have these two very, very special guests on. They're two of my favorite philanthropists and people in the world. It is Lynn and Tom Meredith, and they, along with their entire family, are the event chairs for Waterloo Greenway Conservancy's Glow in the Park. And Lynn and Tom are, every community needs people like Lynn and Tom to really help with their leadership, their vision, their passion, and their trust in others to help propel communities forward. And they're one of the couples, in my opinion, that is instrumental in what Austin has become today because of their leadership and just their care about this community. You can see it in everything that they do. And with that, Lynn, Tom, welcome. And I'm so thankful that you're both here today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Tom, talk and share what the mission of the Waterloo Greenway Conservancy is.
The mission of the Waterloo Greenway Conservancy emanates with one word: connection. Well, basically, connection, most importantly, north, south, east, and west, Austin. Secondly, connecting developers with environmentalists, connecting city, state, and local officials with one another, conservationists with environmentalists, and a string of 5 parks and open spaces.
Wow. I mean, there is so much connection. I love the word connection. And you connected things that you wouldn't necessarily think on the surface should be connected. And you explain how they are and how it kind of goes through downtown with an urban green space. And I want to dive into how you both got involved with the organization. And Tom, I'll let you start with this as well, because in the green room, you were kind of talking about how this has been many, many years in the making. And I'd love for you to share kind of, your initial involvement and how, certain people's vision helped bring you in and you were able to carry that vision forward.
So the unsung heroes behind the evolution of the promise of Waller Creek Conservancy, renamed Waterloo Greenway Conservancy, are really Randy Shade and Cheryl Cole. At the time, they were both councilwomen in the city of Austin, and Cheryl had approached Melba and Melanie with the concept of, we, the city, are going to need help because we now have approved the funding, the bond has passed, and this is 2010. And Randy came to me with the same conversation. And eventually, the two of them came to realize that they were both approaching citizens of Austin who had no elected role at all, and asked if we would join together to help our city build out the promise of connection in Austin through the creek and what became a special zone that has incentives for those around it that would help bring people together.
That's amazing. And 15 years later, here we are. And Lynn, I'd love for you to share, your involvement to do this, because I've seen you both support stuff as a couple, and I've seen you both support stuff individually. So I'd love to hear, what made you decide, what I really want to put my energy, my resources, and my time behind this as well.
Well, thanks, Rob. This is so great to be spending this time with you talking about this project, which has been so important to us, our family, and really marries our values and our love for Austin too. My friend Lucy Baines Johnson always talks about being the supporting cast. And I feel like my role here with Waterloo Greenway has been part of the supporting cast. Tommy jumped in, and I mean, it was a part-time job for years and years and years. What my role in this has been those evening conversations, those morning conversations, those walking the trail, walking what is now Waterloo Greenway, and really dreaming and helping and talking about how you bring together people, how you bring together leadership, what the important pieces are, who might be helping, who might need a little extra nudge to get behind the project. Because this is a public-private partnership, Tommy mentioned the federal funds, the state funds, the city funds, as well as working with developers. It really was an effort for us, for them to kind of think about in a very large way, not only this dream of creating a amazing greenway, an amazing five spectacular parks right in the heart of Austin. So I got the pleasure of not really having to raise money or go to all the meetings, but really to be the supporting cast and be part of the strategic thinking about how to make this park happen.
That's an amazing answer. And I always like to say all great projects, all great events are really they're an ensemble. You need a wide range of players. And when you said supporting cast, it was like, okay, it's an ensemble because I know you've done a lot of work with it as well. And it takes a village, and that's just one way that you have done that. And I want to ask you, Lynn, a follow-up question, and then Tommy, I'd love for you to chime in after that. And that is, what about public green spaces is so important, and why are you all so passionate about this particular project?
Well, at the heart of the matter, we have been environmentalists. We are really about conserving space and providing space. What I know as the mother of four and now a grandmother, and uh, I was professionally an educator before our family sprouted up. Uh, that outdoors and being able to be in nature is so healing, so informative, so educational, so important. I think you know that Tommy and I have lived downtown, right next to Waterloo Greenway for 15 years now. And when this project started being discussed, it was very, very clear to both of us how needed this was. Tommy and I were both raised in urban environments, Tommy in Philadelphia, me in New York City. And those green spaces, those pocket parks, those Central Park, downtown in Philadelphia, there is so much green space. This was so critical to provide that same easy access to green space in what was becoming a very vibrant small city. So it just hit all the pieces of what we love and why we love living in an urban environment, but yet really wanting to access beautiful green space. So it was easy. It was an easy sell for us.
That was so well said. And Tom, I'd love for you to share, your passion about this project because you spoke so much about it and, Randy coming to you and you saying yes. So talk a little bit about your passion and why you feel green spaces are so important.
So, looking backwards and thinking about where we are today, um, Austin and Texas have experienced explosive growth. And when this project was nascent, demographers in the state of Texas were talking about how Texas would become essentially an urban community where 85% of its over 40 million residents in 2060 would live in cities. And that meant it was critically important that cities start to rethink open space. So Lynn mentioned the word pocket parks. Well, Waller Creek is a mile and a half long and longer, actually. But the part we were tackling, just from the tailwaters of the opening up to the Lady Bird Lake, all the way up through to the University of Texas. And now the University of Texas has also embraced the same, if you will, palette and the same sort of view on what the creek is. And importantly, Lee Walker at the time gave us a book called The Last Child in the Woods, which is about the onset of many things, including autism, because people need open space because of its healing powers. And in many respects, in reading that book, you realize, geez, we've talked about for years in our lives since we moved here in 1992 about how let's keep Austin weird. There's just something fundamentally important about that phrase, which other cities around the country have embraced: keep their town weird. Melba and Melanie taught me the phrase, let's also keep Austin a place, or make Austin a place of great design. And so that's why we ended up hiring one of the 31 groups that competed for 4 $100,000 prizes. And the winners were Michael Van Valkenburg and Thomas Pfeiffer and Partners, sort of the landscape and hardscape architects who, through a jury of, if you were, their peers, non-locals, basically, won the ultimate, I think it was a gift to us, but a gift to themselves as well, to go create the promise of Austin through this creek that had become fallow and abused and unused in any meaningful way.
Very, very well said. And, it's funny because when I first moved here 20 years ago, it never occurred to me to go over that way. And really, in the last decade, more and more, I find myself over there. And I think that's just, it's just amazing to see your passion through this. And Lynn, I want to direct the next question to you. And you had talked about this project being an easy yes for you all. And you both have supported, I can't even count the number of, causes you have supported over the years. What are some things that you look for before you say yes and you support that nonprofit or cause?
Moving to Austin over 30 years ago from Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley was a very established community with philanthropy as well as nonprofit leaders. And coming here, it gave me a fresh start to really answer that question for myself. I still had 4 children at home. We had preschoolers as well as middle schoolers. Life was very busy, but it was very important in my DNA to be a servant to the community. I just saw so much opportunity here. I was very, very fortunate to immediately find women who were a generation ahead of me who had been so involved in the Austin community, whether it be at the University of Texas or at some of the service providers, nonprofits. And through a term that I heard, and I had to be schooled in what it meant, visiting with them over lunch and over dinner and over a cup of tea, I learned about the Austin community. And I learned about many different opportunities, both cultural opportunities as well as opportunities that serve the basic needs of the people in Austin. I saw so many parallels with what was happening in Silicon Valley. And what I was able to do was be introduced to the leaders of the nonprofits, so the executive directors, the chairs of the board members, and really pick their brains to hear about what they were doing and why they were doing it and why they thought it was important. I had seen success in Silicon Valley. I also was becoming a sustainer in the Junior League, which is an amazing women's organization that trains women on how to give back to their community, how to be leaders, and how to impact change in their own communities. So I was looking for ways to really implement the skills and the knowledge and the experiences that I had. What I was looking for at the end of the day was leadership. I was looking for someone, leaders in the nonprofit world who had a vision, who also had a strategic plan, a way to get that vision a reality in our community. I was looking for hard workers. I was looking for fun. I learned early on, better not try to make a meeting on a Wednesday night, because a lot of people go to church on Wednesday night, and that became just part of my understanding about now living in the South. It was just really a wonderful opportunity to see the visions that individuals had for Austin, Texas, and now to be here over 30 years later and see some of those visions now realities in this community. And I will say, I was also looking for strong boards, not boards that were meeting and just clapping at the end of the meeting. I was looking for boards that were actually taking their cues and from the strategic plans that they had developed and being sure that they were being implemented and executing on those goals. And it's been amazing because the talent, both at the board level and the executive director level in Austin, Texas, is amazing. No one sits on their hand. No one just nods and smiles. They are roll up your sleeves and get to work because it doesn't. We need everyone in Austin. We need everyone in Austin to be dedicated to the civic life and the important work that the nonprofits are doing.
You gave so many wonderful insights in there. I think they were all my favorite, but my most favorite is that you actually came in and listened. And there are global brands that come in today and don't do that, and they come in and they kind of fall flat with the Austin community or any community because they're putting their previous city's values in a new community. And what I loved about your answer is you went to lunches, you went to dinners, you had teas, you found out what boards were the right boards, but you looked, you did the research, you paid attention, and 3 decades later, you can just see how all that you did with that has just bared, in Waterloo Greenway and so many other projects. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And Tom, giving back, one thing I admire about you so much is just how generous you always are with your spirit, with your time, with your resources. And giving back is really, I can just tell every time I see you two, it's a core part of who you are. So talk about the importance of giving back and how you encourage that in your own, in your own children as well.
So, thinking about that question, I can share with you that there was a period early on in our relationship with Austin where the tech community was essentially being excoriated fairly regularly in the press, other media, for not being engaged and for not essentially involvement in the community and not essentially giving back. And in many respects, taking the fruits that were low bearing that Austin presented without necessarily abiding by the rule of reciprocity. So that led myself and some others to create the Austin Idea Network, which eventually merged into the Entrepreneurs Foundation, which was all about getting the tech community to give back to our community, both dollars and, much more importantly, their time. And their time was in the form of helping Habitat for Housing or any other number of philanthropies, just in a more structured way so that people could take into account, geez, these newcomers aren't all bad. They're actually proving that their actions are speaking louder than their words and their money, that they're now part of us. And I learned early on in the world of tech in the Bay Area that if you want to predict the future, the best way is to help create it. And so in many respects, it was all about helping to create a better future for all of Austin, not just for part of Austin. And I'd say that's sort of the spirit with which I was approaching what the Waterloo Greenway Conservancy has become and was at its outset. In terms of the second part of that question, how to get your children involved, Lynn and I were fortunate enough to have some advisors, one of whom was a Merrill Lynch representative who came to us and said, one of the things you can do is you can start a foundation, fund it with some money, and engage your children in it because you'll be teaching them about giving.
That's beautiful that you did that and that you had the foresight to do that. And I'm really glad you brought up the part about the tech community, and I still hear those criticisms somewhat about the tech community not necessarily giving back. And you all, like, when someone says who does, you are the first person I always mention with that. So, and I see it that you instill it with your kids, and with Waterloo Greenway this year, you're seeing multiple generations of your family are going to be involved. And with that, Lynn, I want to turn the next question to you. And you had talked about finding strong boards and strong organizations. And one thing that's been interesting for me, and I haven't been here as long as you all, but I have seen some of the evolution, is Austin's evolved a lot as a city, specifically in the last decade or so. So talk about what you see with nonprofits who successfully evolve with a growing and changing city such as Austin?
That's a great question. I've spoken about vision, and I've spoken about vision that is embraced by the leader, top of the spear. It is so important for an organization to choose a leader that embraces this, whatever vision it is, whatever mission it is, and can really internalize that, because they are the number one salesperson. Whether they're a good fundraiser or a good people raiser, that is absolutely critical. I will say the two most important jobs of a board are to have good governance so that they can hire and fire volunteers and get those board members to believe in the mission and to get behind the mission as strongly as the leaders are. And I think the second one is the strategic planning committee, because that's the committee that really takes that mission and makes a roadmap to action of action and measurement. How are we doing? And it's important to have a really big goal, very important to have a very big vision, but it's so important to put action behind it. It's not enough just to have a good vision. There has to be a way. How are we going to get there? It's not very different than what happens in a startup or any for-profit entity that is trying to become successful, right? You have to have funding streams, whether that be from grants, whether that be from funding streams that come because you have a cafe. But I always find that if we can go back to the vision and then you can articulate it and make it real, you attract good board members and good leaders. And when we got to Austin, people welcomed us. I laughed about the vision, the visiting, but people said welcome, whether they were super sincere or not, but it felt good. It felt good. It felt inclusive. Might not get invited to all the parties, at people's homes, but it felt real. And that was very different than any other community that we ever lived in. And I don't know that we do enough of that now. I think, I don't know if it's an overhang from COVID. I don't know. It's because we have so many new people in town. So it's hard to really reach out and get to others. But I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders to welcome new voices, new ideas, to help them understand the DNA of Austin, Texas. It's very different than other places. You don't have to be born into anything, a name, an organization, a family, whatever. Civic responsibility is really what we are about. and working with our elected officials, as well as our nonprofits, as well as our social groups, and to invite people in. And once you invite them in, to sustain that relationship.
I'd like to add two comments to that. One is that the welcoming part was so important to us because we were coastal. We were from the East Coast, born and bred, moved to the West Coast, came here after living in the West Coast for almost 2 decades, and it felt genuine. It felt like Austin was a bit different than, say, the Bay Area. Not better, but different. And as part of that, it became crystal clear that everybody in Austin was just good enough and welcomed. And it was a forever young town. And I think in part because of the University of Texas and the 55,000 or so students just at the University of Texas, let alone all the other colleges and community colleges around the town. And the consequence of that is that forever young meant there's a lot of excitement, belief that things can be better and change. And the second part of what I'd like to comment on is that Lynn talked about the strategic importance and believing. You're going to hear the word no a lot as a fundraiser. When you're a startup, when you're raising money, you're raising energy, you're raising people. You're leading a community or an effort or helping to, and the consequence of that is you have to actually believe it, that it's actually going to happen. And if you went back, Rob, and looked at the press when we talked about this, developers at the time who were here in Austin in 1976, when the city of Austin's gift to the nation was the creek, believe it or not.
Really?
Was the creek. And nothing happened between 76 and 2010 when we said, we're going to make this happen. And developers in the press were saying, this will never happen. It's not going to happen. And so I said, well, just watch this.
I love that you brought that energy in, and you can just kind of see the world-class spaces that are kind of developing. We'll touch upon that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk about, because we've talked about governance, and governance is with a nonprofit, but it's also kind of with an event and with leadership and making sure you have the right people. And Lynn, I'd love for you, and then Tom, I'd love for you to chime in after that. What is the key to establishing a great relationship between event chairs, a board, and a nonprofit staff? Because they're really the three legs of the stool to help make a fundraising event successful. And Waterloo Greenway has always done a great job with that. So talk about the keys to establishing those great relationships.
I think number one, and when you choose an event chair or you invite someone to be an event chair, that you really establish the fact that the paid staff is going to be there for them, that they are organized and have a plan, that they are listening to the event chairs. I think what's also key, Rob, and I don't know that this happens in with all event chairs, but they need representation on the board. They need a seat on the board for that year that they are working on the event. And I say that's very important because that's really the DNA of what's happening day to day. I think an event chair then gets to understand the budget. They get to understand other people's excitement about a nonprofit. And they also get to give the board insight about the philanthropic community. That's what they are representing. So I think that's really, really important. I think that, Tommy and I love to throw a party. I mean, personally, we entertain a lot. We invite people to our home, not always to ask them for money, but just to have great conversation and talk about whatever it is the topic of the day, whether that be family, whether that be the political state of Austin or the city, world affairs. I mean, we love those conversations. So I think what's critical is that as event chairs, you plan those kind of social times Loneliness is a real big issue for all of us these days. I think that is a way to bring people together to really learn yourself as the event chair, but also to find new friends and new relationships. I think that event chairs need to be bold, right? It's one thing to set a goal, but it's another thing to create a group. And when you're creating a group, you have to look broadly. And one of the things I learned when we first moved to Austin was multi-generational relationships. Because we're a small city, we were able to make friends and do events with people that were younger than us, people that were 2 or 3 generations older than us, and reaching out to them and saying, hey, what can you tell me? How can you help me? What do I need to know? Like, don't call a meeting on Wednesday night, Lynn. It's not going to be well attended. Those little bits of information, whether you've lived here all your life or you're just new to town, it's really very important to be multi-generational, to reach out to communities, to reach out to people that have relationships in other communities in Austin, Texas that you don't. So I think the representation, the reaching out, making it fun, putting
Actually,
a glass of wine, whatever, so critical.
Absolutely. And what I loved about your answer, and we've talked about this on the show before, great events reflect the tapestry of the community in which they serve. And everything you described was so emblematic of that. And you did it so eloquently and just so succinctly. It was great. And Tom, I'd love your thoughts on this question as well, especially because, especially with your business background and, your time at Dell and all that. Talk about the keys to establishing, a great relationship between event chairs, a board, and a nonprofit staff, and to make sure everything's cohesive, from a leadership perspective.
People, process equals performance. Lynn just talked, as you highlighted, about the tapestry that's needed to essentially be filled in, or a mosaic. And if any piece is missing, it's not as good as if all pieces were together. And what's the glue that holds that together is involvement on all parties' parts, not just the chair. That person cannot be out on a limb by themselves. Including them in the board meeting, either as a board member or observer, gives them context and gives them the ability to tell stories. And people love stories. From the time we're little children, we love stories. We want our parents, and we listen to those stories. There's not enough listening on the part of some chairs, and they're not delegating enough, and they're trying to do it all. And that's not going to lead to the performance that, or the outcomes that are really needed to essentially create legacies inside of our community.
So well said. The people and process part that equals performance. I mean, that's really such a mantra that we can kind of all take, not just if we're doing stuff with events, but really throughout our entire lives. And Tom, I want to ask a follow-up question about donors. And the thing about about Glow in the Park that I love is, and I remember the first time I went to Glow, I turned to my husband and I said, I now have a space that I can say whenever anyone in Houston and Dallas says, is Austin a world-class city? I can say, go to the Moody Amphitheater at Waterloo Greenway, and you will see that Austin has those world-class spaces now. So talk about how you use that beautiful space to encourage donors to attend, give, and really make Waterloo Greenway a successful event, because I know it's an event that you two have supported, from the beginning.
Well, it's a story come to life, because what was there was a park that essentially was unused. And to this day, I'm surprised by how many locals, people who have lived here for more than a few years, in many cases decades, have still not been there. and they're depriving themselves and their family and friends of this gift to our community, which essentially took world-class architects, the Ladybird Wildflower Center, and made it into something literally transformative. So whether it's the Fly Bridge or the Heritage Trees or the iconic performing arts venue, which according to Live Nation is one of the most important and one that all of the Live Nation big acts want to perform at as the best amphitheater in the country. And oh, by the way, there's blooms year round because of the way it was approached with indigenous species of plants and flora, fauna, if you will. It's magical. I don't know the better word. It's just magical. Every time I go there, I get inspired to just walk around and just wonder, wow, what this is today versus what it was when we started with the concept.
Absolutely. The transformation is nothing short of remarkable. And Lynn, feel free to chime in.
So what's really amazing, Glow happens on the Thursday between the two weekends of ACL. And ACL is a fabulous event that happens in Austin. It could only happen in Austin. And it's very organic. It's very eclectic. And it's exciting. This event, which was conceived, how do we take advantage of the talent that is here in Austin, Texas, and help those folks who are interested in music and those folks who are so dedicated to greenspace, to Waterloo Greenway, those folks who want to have an experience that is not a black tie event, not inside, where there's a lot of, it has a festival feel, and yet there's great food, there's fabulous entertainment. I'm very excited about our talent this year, Lamont Landers. He's so up and coming. I mean, we feel so fortunate to have secured him, and it's going to be a great night. He's a person, this event is an event that attracts all age groups. Those of us who are on this side of the baby boomers to the millennials and the X generation, it is an event that everybody can get to. You can dress however you want. You can be whoever you want that night. There's so much conversation and excitement. And you're in this beautiful space that was dreamt about and that this community has raised funds for. And wow, it's huge.
It really is fantastic. I mean, it really is. I guess you'd call it we'll make this a hashtag, festival at its finest. It is essentially what that is. People are dressed, people dress for concert, people dress in cocktail. I know a couple of years they added the sneaker theme so that people are encouraged to wear comfortable shoes because you're in a park to kind of bring that connection to the ground and all that. And Tom, tell me something you're excited about for this year's event.
Well, Lamont is one of the reasons I'm excited, but I'm always excited because Glow was really the first gala opportunity we had. But the word glow emanated from the Creek Show. And the Creek Show, essentially, people have forgotten about, but it's going to be brought back next year. And it'll be on the Lady Bird Johnson side of the string of parks. And the Creek Show was all about light. And Mayor Adler, in the second year of the Creek Show, said this was the most diverse group he has ever seen come together in Austin, Texas. Well, that was a dream come true for us.
Absolutely true. And it really is. It is one of those things where it's one of the very few events in Austin where you see every corner of the community come in. And that's a testament to you all. That's a testament to Melba. That's a testament to Chris Mattson. It's a testament to Gary Farmer. It's a testament to so many people, led by you all, of course. And I know we're coming up on time today. But I always love to kind of end with kind of a fun final question. And Tom, we'll let you go first, and then Lynn, you can have the last word. And that is, what advice would you give to an organization looking to successfully host a gala?
Be prepared to work hard, because luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
I love that answer. I love that answer. And Lynn, what about you?
I will second what Tommy said. I would also say get your tribe together, get your cohort together, get your strong people around, because it can be so much fun if you do it as a group. If you have enough people surrounding you that you are taking this on together, it's a group effort. We stand on everybody else's shoulders. You mentioned Chris, you mentioned the farmers. We stand on the shoulders of Susan and Michael Dell because they brought us here. They are amazing philanthropists. Think about it in the broader sense. Who do I want to spend this year working with? How do I build this team? How do I make this fun? And how do I make this a success, a group success? We stand on each other's shoulders. We never do anything on our own. It's very important to understand community and group work.
I'd like to add that when you look at the capstone, which is actually the amphitheater, the Waterloo Amphitheater, that fallow park became the hub of the Innovation Center. And think about, since Lynn mentioned the Dells, Dell Med School, the Dell Health Center, the now UT Innovation Center building, and eventually we'll have the Paseo on the original street most adjacent to it, the park. I just feel that the connections continue to play out in ways that was hard to imagine at the time, but now you're witnessing them in real life. And I think that it comes back to, you have to believe that you can help predict the future by helping to create it.
And build partnerships. Build those partnerships. That's so key in a public-private effort like this. And everything is public-private when it comes down to nonprofits. So keep that in mind.
That is absolutely true. And this was an amazing conversation. And I learned personally so much today. And your vision has really helped make what Austin is today. So Tom, Lynn, thank you so much. I cannot thank you both enough for being here today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity, Rob.
Absolutely. And Glow in the Park, benefiting Waterloo Greenway Conservancy, will be held on October 2nd, 2025 at Waterloo Greenway's Moody Amphitheater in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit waterloogreenway.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.